Somewhere inside Iran right now, a solid-fuel ballistic missile sits in a hardened underground silo, fueled, targeted, and ready to launch in under 10 minutes. No satellite will see it coming. No radar will catch it until it's already above the atmosphere. 2 weeks ago, Iran's top military negotiator told Washington exactly what that means. "We have prepared new cards on the battlefield." He didn't say what those cards are. Tonight, the ceasefire expires, and this is what the Pentagon already knows. This is a forward analytical scenario based on verified Iranian military capabilities and current U.S. intelligence assessments. By every conventional measure, Iran's military has been devastated. 6 nuclear facilities damaged, 11 senior IRGC commanders killed, 2/3 of known missile launchers destroyed. The man who built Iran's entire military doctrine for the past decade, IRGC Commander-in-Chief Mohammad Bagher, is dead. And yet, 5 days ago, the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency sat before Congress and said this: "Iran retains thousands of missiles and attack drones. Its asymmetric warfare capabilities are expected to advance, not collapse, and Tehran is actively sourcing military replacements from Russia and China." That gap between what the strikes achieved and what Iran still holds is the most important military question of this conflict. Here is why it exists. Iran never built a military designed to match American power. It built a military designed to make American power too expensive to use. 30 years of IRGC doctrine, 30 years of investment pointed toward one scenario: absorbing the opening strikes of a U.S. campaign and then imposing costs so severe in money, in material, in time, that Washington chooses a deal over continued war. That doctrine has a name inside the IRGC: forward defense. And its entire logic rests on a single premise: that America's political will to fight is more fragile than Iran's will to bleed. Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf is not a politician speaking in metaphors. He is a former IRGC Air Force commander who knows exactly what is sitting in those silos. When he says new cards, he is describing specific weapons systems moved into firing position during the truce. 4 cards, 4 domains. Here is what each one is, how it works, and what it means for the next 72 hours. On the night of March 20th, 2 ballistic missiles lifted off from inside Iranian territory and flew toward a target 2,500 miles away. Diego Garcia, the remote Indian Ocean island that hosts the joint US-UK military base, capable of launching B-2 stealth bombers directly at Iran. One missile broke apart in flight. The other was intercepted by a US Navy destroyer. Neither hit the base, but the reaction inside the Pentagon was not relief. It was alarm. Because the self-declared range limit on Iran's ballistic missiles had always been 2,000 kilometers. Diego Garcia is 4,000 kilometers from Iranian soil. In a single failed attack, Tehran had revealed a weapons capability that no Western intelligence agency had confirmed on the record. Iran had hidden the true reach of its missiles for years and chose this moment, this conflict, to show it. Intelligence analysts now assess the attack likely used a modified version of the GAM-100, a rocket derived from Iran's civilian space launch program. The Zoljana solid propellant space launch vehicle, developed openly for satellite launches, reaches 4,000 to 5,000 kilometers when reconfigured as a 2-stage ballistic missile. Solid fuel engines mean no pre-launch fueling. No fueling means no satellite detection window. These missiles go from underground silo to launch in under 10 minutes, faster than the US early warning system is designed to process. And there is one more layer. CNN confirmed through multiple US intelligence sources that Russia has been feeding Iran real-time targeting data, positions and movements of American ships, aircraft, and troops throughout the Gulf. Iran's own satellite network cannot track a target at Diego Garcia. With Russian data, that limitation disappears entirely. Hudson Institute analyst Kan Kasapoglu put it precisely after the March 20th strike. Iran is no longer signaling restraint. It is signaling reach. And that reach, reversed in direction, puts every American base between the Gulf and Eastern Europe inside a potential engagement envelope that did not officially exist 60 days ago. If the ceasefire breaks tonight, those reserve missiles come off hold status. If you want to understand every weapon system in this conflict before the next strike happens, subscribe to Operation Fury. We deploy new analysis every week. The Strait of Hormuz is 34 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. That number matters more than any other geographic fact in this conflict, because the entire IRGC Navy was built around it. Picture the geometry. A U.S. carrier strike group needs room to maneuver, room to generate aircraft sorties, room to maintain standoff distance from shore-based missile batteries. In the open ocean, American naval power is effectively unchallengeable. Inside a 34-kilometer corridor, flanked on both sides by Iranian coastline, bristling with anti-ship missiles, that same carrier group becomes a target inside a kill box. It cannot exit quickly. Iran's naval doctrine for this environment runs in 3 simultaneous layers, designed to overwhelm a ship's defensive systems faster than its crew can process and engage each threat. Layer 1 comes from below. IRGC unmanned underwater vehicles, UUVs, approach the hull undetected at low speed, deploying mines or delivering direct charges to propulsion systems. The U.S. has already seized Iranian UUV components bound for Houthi forces in Yemen. Iran has been operating these systems in the Gulf for years. Their full inventory count is not publicly known. Layer 2 arrives at the surface. Unmanned speedboats, USVs packed with explosives and guided remotely, attack from multiple vectors simultaneously. These are not suicide boats requiring a human crew. They are guided missiles shaped like vessels. Iran already used one to strike the oil tanker Sonangol Namibe in Kuwait, 800 kilometers from the strait, demonstrating operational range that extends well beyond the choke point itself. Layer 3 is the swarm. 40 to 60 IRGC fast attack craft approach from different compass points simultaneously, mixing armed boats with decoys, firing anti-ship missiles from the coastline in coordination. Each individual boat is not the threat. The simultaneity is the threat. It forces a ship's combat management system to process and prioritize dozens of targets in seconds, while anti-ship missiles are already inbound from the shore. And underneath all 3 layers, the mines Iran planted in the strait in the opening days of the war. The mines that Iran has reportedly lost track of. They are still there. No one has fully cleared them. Every vessel transiting the strait right now is navigating a minefield whose map exists nowhere. Not in Washington, not in Tehran. The strait is not a closed door. It is a loaded weapon pointed at the global economy, operated by a force that has spent 3 decades practicing exactly one battle inside exactly this geography. Every mine in that strait costs Iran roughly $3,000. Every minesweeper sortie the U.S. Navy runs to find it costs 40 times that. And Iran has already lost track of how many it planted. That is not an accident of war. That is the entire point. Consider what that math looks like from inside a U.S. Navy minesweeper running sorties through the strait right now. The crew knows the mines are there. They know the approximate zones. What they don't know, what no one knows, is the exact count, because Iran lost track of the number it planted. Every pass through that corridor is a calculation. How much risk? How much time? How much of the ship's defensive attention pulled away from the fast boats that might be running a coordinated surface approach from the North Shore, while the crew is focused on what's underneath? That is asymmetric warfare, working exactly as designed. Not one overwhelming threat, 3 simultaneous threats of moderate probability, each demanding full attention, none of them individually decisive, all of them together creating a situation where a mistake is not a matter of if, but when. Iran cannot outspend the United States. What it can do is force the United States to outspend itself into a political crisis. And it has engineered its entire military apparatus to exploit that exact mechanism. Here is the math Iranian planners have built their doctrine around. A Shahed 136 loitering munition, the kamikaze drone Iran mass produces domestically and has proliferated to proxies from Yemen to Ukraine, costs between $20,000 and $50,000 per unit. The Patriot interceptor missile used to shoot it down costs $4 million. The CENTCOM interceptor costs $16 million. Every time Iran launches a drone and the US defends against it, America spends between 80 and 800 times more than Iran does. The US is currently spending an estimated $2 billion per day in this conflict. Iran's entire annual defense budget is $16 billion. The numbers tell the strategy. Iran does not need to destroy the American military. It needs to launch enough cheap weapons across enough simultaneous fronts to drain interceptor stockpiles and political will faster than Washington can replace them. During the ceasefire, those fronts were being reloaded. In Iraq, Iranian-backed militia commanders have spent the ceasefire doing one thing: counting American bases. There are 8 of them within rocket and drone range across Iraq and Syria. Each one requires its own defensive perimeter, its own Patriot battery, its own interceptor stockpile. Iran doesn't need to destroy those bases. It needs to force the US to defend all 8 simultaneously, because every interceptor fired over Baghdad is one fewer interceptor available over the Strait of Hormuz. The proxy network is not a second front. It is a drain on the first one. In Yemen, Houthi forces spent the ceasefire reconstituting anti-ship missile inventories. The Red Sea corridor, where American naval assets are already managing 2 simultaneous blockade operations, becomes a second front pulling destroyers and interceptor stocks away from the Persian Gulf precisely when the Gulf needs them most. In cyberspace, the DIA has assessed Iran's capabilities as ranging from mass data deletion against government networks to coordinated attacks on financial infrastructure. This is not theoretical. In the first 12 days of the war, major international banks, including Citibank and HSBC branches in Qatar, began shutting operations after Iran threatened to target economic centers linked to American and Israeli interests in the Gulf. A coordinated cyber campaign launched simultaneously with a missile campaign does not just attack military targets. It attacks the economic confidence of every Gulf state hosting American forces. The architecture of this third card is not one overwhelming blow. It is 30 simultaneous pressure points, each individually manageable, collectively designed to produce one outcome: a morning in Washington where the cost of continuing the war exceeds the cost of making a deal. That calculation, that specific political breaking point, is what 2 weeks of ceasefire gave Iran time to refine. Which of these capabilities concerns you most? Drop your answer in the comments and tell us what scenario you want to see next on Operation Fury. Before addressing how the US military positions itself against each of these cards, there is one variable that sits beneath all of them, the one that neither side's planning fully resolves. Iran still holds 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity. The IAEA has not had access to Iran's nuclear facilities since March. 6 of 8 known nuclear facilities were damaged in the strikes. The critical underground enrichment plant at Fordo, buried 80 to 90 meters inside a mountain, accessible only to the GBU-57 bunker buster carried exclusively by B-2 bombers, remains structurally intact. Nobody in Washington knows with certainty where that uranium is right now, whether it has moved again during the ceasefire, how close Iranian scientists are to the final enrichment steps that take 60% to weapons grade. Iran told the IAEA that normal safeguards are, in its words, legally untenable and stopped allowing inspections. That uncertainty is not a side issue. It is the reason this entire conflict started, and it is the variable that determines whether a resumed American campaign is a second round of airstrikes or something categorically different. The U.S. military's response to each of these cards is real. It is positioned, and in some cases it is already operating. THAAD batteries and Patriot Advanced Capability 3 interceptors have been repositioned across the Gulf. The same Aegis Standard Missile 3 system that killed the Diego Garcia shot in March is now covering a wider envelope, MH-53E. Sea Dragon helicopters are running active minesweeping sorties in the strait right now, working the minefield Iran can no longer fully map. The Precision Strike Missile, PRSM, used in combat for the first time on March 4th, extends American deep strike reach to 500 kilometers against hardened targets. But here is the problem none of those systems solve. Iran has spent the ceasefire moving, repositioning missile batteries, dispersing command nodes, sourcing replacements from Russia and China. Every American counter has a fixed location. Iran's cards do not. The advantage the U.S. holds right now, the window of maximum degradation of Iranian capability relative to its own, is not permanent. It is closing. And somewhere inside that window, 440 kilograms of enriched uranium sits in a location no satellite has confirmed and no inspector has visited in 6 weeks. That is the card beneath all the other cards, and no interceptor battery in the Gulf answers it. Iran entered this war as a conventional military power and is exiting the ceasefire as something harder to categorize, a degraded but not defeated force that revealed weapons the world didn't know it had, sustained economic pressure that no intelligence estimate fully predicted, and absorbed casualties that would have ended most military organizations while keeping its command structure functional. The new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, more hardline than his father, more aligned with the IRGC, elected with the full backing of a force that has absorbed 6,000 casualties and is still in the field, has already made his position clear. The regime promised revenge from the first day. The ceasefire bought time. What happens next depends entirely on whether the cards Iran prepared are revealed or held. And if they are revealed, if the missiles come off reserve, if the strait activates, if the proxies open every front simultaneously, the U.S. military response will be unlike anything this conflict has seen so far. That response is the next scenario. Subscribe to Operation Fury and hit the bell. You don't want to miss what America's full, unrestricted second strike looks like. See you on the next operation.